Yo, what's up? This is Toru, and in a way, so are you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a music producer, artist, and entrepreneur. I make music for that space between the dance floor and the bedroom, which has been streamed millions of times and been licensed by brands big and small, including companies like Apple. I believe that regardless of what you produce, whether it be music, art, physical goods, or even spreadsheets, you have a process, whether you know it or not. To explore this further, I created the ProducerHead podcast. ProducerHead is a place to have conversations with other producers about their experience and process to share what works and what doesn't, to help each of us learn and improve our own processes along the way. Today's guest is Brooklyn-based Cryptic, a rapper, producer, drum programmer / finger drummer extraordinaire, and honestly just a legend in his own right. If you had told a younger me that I'd be talking to this man in this context, there's just no way I would have believed you. He's a member of the Addams Family, he's released music through Def Jux, has credits with artists that include Aesop Rock, Cannibal Ox, and others that I'm definitely missing. And if that weren't enough, Cryptic just received a Billboard Plaque for the Lloyd Banks track Dead Roses, which he produced. Throughout this conversation, we discuss, among many other topics, finding your own sound, impostor syndrome, consistency and quantity as a path to quality, and behind the scenes of how his placement with Lloyd Banks came to be. Again, it is a trip to be presenting this episode to you. Cryptic has made beloved contributions to music and remains a humble and kind dude. In this conversation, he reminds us that the challenges of pursuing our goals can often be difficult, but always worthwhile. And with that, here's a conversation with Cryptic. Episode 3 of ProducerHead starts now. What's up, everybody? This is Toru, and in a way, so are you. Welcome back to another episode of ProducerHead. Today, we have a very special guest on the podcast. As an early member of the legendary NYC underground crew Addams Family, Cryptic has been an influential figure in the hip-hop music scene for over 3 decades. Yes, 3 decades. His music is characterized by cinematic textures, chaotic drums, and cleverly crafted lyrics that often contain social commentary and multiple meanings. And I'm very excited to go deep with him today. Please welcome Cryptic.
Peace, everyone.
What's up, man?
Chilling, man. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Very excited to get into what we got going on.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure. Anyone wants to hear what I have to say, which I don't get to do often enough, so.
Yeah, man, I hear you. I'm very excited. So first of all, man, congrats on the recent placement with Lloyd Banks. I know you just got your first plaque. And for those of you not watching, there's a Billboard plaque hanging right behind this man right now.
Yes, there is.
So tell us a little bit about that, man. I mean, it's the classic prize in music. So how does it feel? Tell us about it.
Obviously, it feels great. I mean, it's hanging up behind me because it makes me feel good. It's a little surreal, especially considering the type of music that I make. I think every musician who puts their music out into the world kind of envisions it being accepted on a level that, for lack of a better word, they kind of fantasize about and kind of stays there. It's a fantasy, and that's cool. It's not something like I ever set out to do or wanted to do to the point where I'm like gonna change my art. It just kind of happened. It was a shock, but not a shock as far as like the actual logistics of the plaque happening. That was not a shock because I kind of knew once this placement happened and I saw kind of it take off in the streaming as far as the YouTube video views and the talk about the album and just who the artist was. I kind of knew it was going to go somewhere. And it's not a shock also because the way Billboard plaques kind of work, it's about a week's worth of sales and where they chart. So I knew like first week that like, oh shit, we charted on 3 Billboard charts. So technically I could have 3 plaques, but plaques, many people probably do not know this, plaques cost money. Like they don't just, hey, you got it. And they send it to you for free. You got to pay for them. When I found out I was on 3 charts, or not when Lloyd Banks was on 3 charts and I produced 1 song on the album, I had the option to get either 3 plaques, 1 plaque that showed all 3 charts, or the plaque that I got, which just shows 1. The reason why I chose this one is kind of silly, but the place where it's going to go in the living room, we had space for the horizontal portrait mode frame, but we didn't have space for the landscape. So that was the instrumental decision on just getting 1 over 3.
Yeah, congrats. Again, it's amazing, man. I didn't realize it was on 3 separate charts too. That's really rad.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. Well deserved. Well deserved. And I guess, yeah, man. And also, I guess maybe pull back the curtain for us a little bit, because I think, you see something like that and you're just like, how do I do that? So can you tell us like what the process was like and how it came about?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I will peel back the curtain, so to speak. I don't know if there's going to be a gem of like, this is how you do it, because I don't think I could repeat the process if I wanted to. So we'll go back a few years, because it started about 4 or 5 years ago, actually, where I had hundreds of beats on my hard drive, as many of us producers do. I had just come off the heels of making a beat a day for 100 days straight for the 3rd time. So I had literally had 300 new beats that had no homes. So I was like, you know what, let's try and play the placement game and see if we can make something happen. So for about a year, I hit up a lot of contacts that I knew, like friends of friends that knew a manager or direct line to an artist. And I got my beats in the hands of a lot of artists that I wanted to work with. I'm not going to name names because nothing ever happened. There were people who hit me back. I like this beat, and this beat. I'm going to record to it. Started writing to this beat. Lots of almost things, but I've been doing this for a long time. If I could have a dime for every almost song, I'd be a rich man. So after about a year doing that, I just saw on Twitter, I don't even remember how I got it. Someone retweeted it, and it was like, Lloyd Banks is looking for beats. Had an email that said lloydbanksbeats@gmail. And then I clicked on to see who posted this or who tweeted it. And it was Lloyd Banks' manager, Hovain, rest in peace. And I just decided to shoot my shot. I had no in. It was just a kind of a cold email like, hey, saw your tweet. Here are 5 beats. Let me know. So to rewind my selection of beats, I had a very specific thing that I was doing with all the placements is I would pick 2 beats from my stash where I thought that based on this artist's history of tracks that they've rapped over that I thought they would like. Then I send 2 tracks where as a producer, I think of this artist and I'm like, they don't rap over this kind of stuff, but I would like to see them on this kind of stuff. I'll send 2 of those. And then 1 beat is just purely unapologetically 100% me, the shit that I like to make, the shit that I like to do. Maybe it's a little off center. It's a little weird in that hip hop space for rappers. And that's what I did with Lloyd Banks. And literally 2 days after I sent the email, I got an email back from the manager saying Lloyd I think he said Lloyd recorded to one of your beats. It's not going to be on this album and we're not really sure what's going to happen with it, but hold on to that beat. So I chalked it up as another almost and like, all right, I'm not holding beats at this point. I don't hold beats for anyone. That's a thing I will say to producers. Unless they pay you, don't hold a beat. It's silly because you'll be holding beats for 10, 15 years and nothing ever gets done with them. So anyway, I didn't hold the beat. Literally 4 years later, I wake up, I check my Instagram because I'm an addict. And it's real. The first thing I do when I wake up is turn off my alarm and then check Instagram for a few minutes before I get my day started. So I see I have a couple DMs. I look and one stands out because it says it's from Lloyd Banks. And I'm like, no, it can't be Lloyd Banks. So I click the profile before I even read the message. And I'm like, oh shit, yep, blue check mark. However many followers he got, yep, that's actually Lloyd Banks. So I check the message and it literally is one word and just says peace. I'm like, okay. Mind you, this is 4 years later. So I'm like half forgot that he has a beat of mine. Like, I don't know what's going on at this point.
Wow.
So my response to peace was peace. That's it. I just press enter.
There you go. When in doubt, just say peace.
Yeah. And he texted me at like 5 a.m. or something. my IG notifications are off, so it's not like it would bother me, but it's just like
Mm.
typical rapper, 5 a.m. in the studio, probably.
Right.
So I just said peace, and like maybe 5 minutes later, he says, "Hey, did you produce a beat called?" At the time, it was called "First Sunset of 2016." So I literally made it the first sunrise of 2016. I stayed up all night for New Year's, and I made a beat, half hungover, half drunk, and that was that beat. So that's one tip: is do something absurd like stay up all night and get drunk, and then make a beat. But yeah, so like we just exchanged info, and he's like, yeah, I recorded to it, you know. And my first thing, you know, because again, I've been doing this for a while. It's like, all right, you know, can I get your manager's information and let our people handle the paperwork kind of thing? And that was it. And I mean, it took, I'm not going to get into the details of like negotiations, but it took about 4 to 5 months to negotiate a deal that everyone was happy with. And yeah, then it came out and it was a single, there was a video, and you know, not long after it charted on Billboard, and that's kind of the story. I think the one takeaway from it all is to be yourself. Don't be afraid to send the things that you like, because you really can't, as much as we as producers like to think that we have our finger on what a rapper wants because of their past stuff that they've picked, you really never know. And beyond that, like, you can really never even know what people are going to like. Because I think I have a perfect record in being wrong. And like, in all the years, it's like, all right, this is the song that everyone's going to like on the album. It's never that song. It's always a song that I almost threw away and didn't put on the album that people gravitate towards. So, you know, you got to take off the prediction hat and sometimes just kind of close your eyes and shoot your shot, but make sure that it's your shot, not someone else's.
Yeah, no, man, I love that, because I think it's when you're trying to prepare something for somebody else, maybe it's easy to forget because you're looking at all the stuff that they have available to kind of inform that decision and what you show them. But you can't see behind all of that, and you can't see maybe the artistic trajectory that they're on and maybe where they're trying to go and what they're trying to do. And so, yeah, to your point, man, I think that's a really cool piece. Put out the work that's you, because ultimately that's what was chosen, right?
But yeah, I mean, I would have never thought that he would have picked that beat, like 100%. Like if I was picking stuff that I thought he would pick, I would have never sent that, because it's not like anything that he's ever done. And that's also kind of the beauty of it. And like, side note, you know, I'm going to be real about this, is that when you have a song that's, I think it's close to 1 million streams on YouTube, it's probably past it. I don't know. I haven't looked in a while, but you get a lot of comments, and you know, you like to look at the comments. I don't care who you are. Everyone looks, like, bad, good. You see the hateful ones, but like a lot of them were just like, this is the kind of beat I always wish Lloyd Banks would rap over, like that kind of stuff. It was just kind of like, I don't know, just kind of very satisfying to know that it was so left field for him, and that he saw something in it and wasn't scared of it and kind of embraced it. And kind of, I feel like I pushed him in a different direction that he normally wouldn't go. Not that I had any, it's not like I was in the studio pushing him, but, you know, just like my music, which is another kind of satisfying thing to know that there was no relationship. It was just the music that kind of did it, you know?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, congrats again, man. And everybody, please go bump that track and leave a good comment on YouTube. You don't want any of that out there.
Leave an honest comment. It's Dead Roses by Lloyd Banks, by the way. Yeah, just be honest. I don't care. You could tell me you hate it. You know, that's cool too. You need it all.
That's right. We're here for it. Shout out to the haters.
Peace to the haters.
Let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, man, because a couple of weeks ago when we were chatting, like, that came up. And I want to ask you how you define imposter syndrome.
There's a number of different ways that it manifests, but I guess the basic part of it is not feeling like you belong in the room. that could look like a lot of things. It could look like these guys are quote unquote real musicians. I don't play an instrument. These guys have, I couldn't say this before, but these guys have plaques, like who am I? Even like Sidechain, there's a shout out to Sidechain, which is how I know you. A bunch of really talented people and a bunch of really, really knowledgeable things in lots of different things. And there sometimes I feel like an imposter because like, name drop Polly. Polly is like a brilliant dude, an incredible musician, mixing engineer. Like he just seems like he's the guy that knows everything about everything. And
yeah, shout out to Polly.
Shout out to Polly.
Yeah.
But when you're in those spaces, it's kind of, sometimes it's difficult to like, not challenge it, but just kind of like say your piece that doesn't match up with that. Without feeling like, this dude is clearly brilliant. Who am I to say anything that opposes it? So that's part of imposter syndrome. I think it manifests in a lot of different ways. I think a major one for me is perfectionism. I feel like everyone else shit is perfect. And I see all the flaws in mine. I don't see any of their flaws. I just hear the vibe and it's perfect. And clearly that's not the case. We're all artists. Everyone got flaws in every one of their things. And we all see it from the inside. From the outside, it's never apparent. But yeah, that's kind of how it affects me. And I'm sure I'm forgetting things or missing points that other people would make about imposter syndrome. But I'm 100% certain that everyone goes through it on some levels. And in the off case that you don't go through it at all, probably not that good of an artist. Sorry. Because like there's got to be like some level of imperfection for it to be genuine to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like maybe the imperfections are what make it sort of beautiful.
Right.
Or real.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's even bad calling it imperfections. I mean, it's just kind of, everyone's got a fingerprint. One's not better than the other. It's just different. So it's a lifelong journey trying to embrace those quote unquote imperfections. And I'll let you know if I ever get there, but I don't foresee it happening.
Right on. I mean, you mentioned that example of sort of like, I'm in this room, these dudes have plaques, I don't. Now that you have a plaque, has that done anything to like ease the existence or the struggle with imposter syndrome for you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I've reached a lot of quote unquote accomplishments, and I feel like everyone, it almost feels to a degree that I don't deserve it, or that I didn't earn it, or that it was luck, or that I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right beat. Or it's never about, oh shit, I worked really hard at this shit for however many years, like 30 years is when I've been releasing music. I've been making longer than that. So it's like, it's this weird thing in me. And again, I've spoken to a lot of people. I've read books on the topic. It's not uncommon and it's pretty normal, but it's something that you have to keep at bay for it to be a productive thing and not something that just beats you down. But yeah, no, getting a plaque did not make me feel any like, oh, I did it. I belong. Now let's fucking go. I don't suspect I'll ever fully get there.
Well, allow me to speak for myself as well as anybody listening, man. And you definitely deserve it. And we're all super proud.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I like hearing myself speak about it kind of makes me think that maybe I'm coming off as like this guy who's like beating himself down. It's not that at all. There's definitely waves of like, I'm fucking proud. I got a plaque and I know it's a beat that I made that I really like and that happened. But then there's also the other side. There's always multiple voices going and kind of oddly enjoy it because it keeps me pushing to improve. Because I'm never fully satisfied with where I am. So, if I'm not satisfied here, I got to keep moving forward, right?
Right. So, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of hinting at some strategies that you use to manage imposter syndrome and some of the challenges that you feel, kind of the conflict you experience internally as a producer. So maybe you can share some strategies or some ideas or thoughts that you've come across that have been helpful in managing that? Because I do agree and tend to think that we all experience it, and it does manifest in different ways. But I think there's a high likelihood that it's like there are strategies that have overlap and can work in different contexts for different people.
Oddly, I made a post about this at the end of last year because the year before I did a lot. I released 2 albums, a vinyl, CD, cassette that sold really well, got a lot of praise. I released a single every Friday for 85% of the year. I just did a lot. I was constantly doing things. I was doing shows. I don't even know how many shows, but it was more shows than I'd done in years through events. And I was just hustling. And then the next year, I didn't release anything at all. In 2022, I did not release one thing. I didn't really make much. But at the end of the year, I was kind of beating myself up, and I sat down and I literally wrote everything that I did do. Didn't think of the things I didn't do. I just wrote all the things I did do. And the Lloyd Banks thing was in there. Got a plaque. I did a bunch more shows. I did my first out of state beat sets. I flew to Oakland to do a few shows. It's just kind of like, I mean, there's a lot more on that list, but like that moment of just looking at it all on the page. And here it was, like beating myself up about not accomplishing shit in this year. And I'm like, oh shit, I actually did. I just didn't accomplish it in the ways that I'm used to, which is releasing records. So that was a huge thing for me. And it literally just happened by accident. It wasn't like a grand plan, like I'm going to write a gratitude journal or anything like that. You know, it was just kind of like I literally was at the end of the year and I was like, I got to make a post kind of summing up my year, but I didn't really do anything. And I was like, just started writing down. I was like, oh, okay, I could sum this up. So like, that was one of the big things. Another thing that I kind of have to mention, and I've mentioned this a number of times in a number of places and on social media, it's a book that kind of speaks to all of this, including Impostor Syndrome and just kind of art. And it's the title of the book says it all. It's called Art and Fear. And it just kind of deals with every way that an artist deals with fear and how to cope with fear. It's not that it gives you strategies for me, and it does, but for me, the book was really helpful in that it'll talk about famous artists. And it's not really it's not musicians really. I mean, sometimes it is musicians, but it's like Mozart or Bach or something. It's not like, I'm not talking to Black Thought or anything, but, you know, but they'll just kind of tell you that they went through this thing. And I'm like, holy shit, that's exactly what I'm going through. And they're fucking Picasso. Like he had trouble appreciating his own work. And that was just kind of eye-opening for me as always being kind of the guy who felt like he was on the outside looking at this place that he wanted to be, not really ever taking the time to notice that I was there, if that makes sense. So I think that's really important, is to look back and to look where you are, where you've been, in order to push yourself where you're going.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's easy to feel like you're going through these kinds of things by yourself, but these are things that other people have experienced. And so just getting that visibility, I think, can do a lot. So right. I'll make sure to get this book, and we'll link it in the show notes and in the description of this video for people. Are there any other books that kind of come to mind that have been helpful to you in dealing with kind of these conflicts?
There are a million.
Maybe give us your top few.
There are others that don't necessarily speak to this, but give techniques that help with. It's kind of weird because this doesn't really fall into this, but like getting things done is super helpful in making you feel good about the things, feeling good about yourself, I feel like talking to a lot of producers and a lot of artists, I see a lot of the big problem is not getting things finished or to a point where they feel they're finished. And I know people who are super talented and 15 years later, they haven't released a thing. And their stuff is worth it, but they're always waiting for this perfect moment. So there's a book, which I'm sure many people probably know about it, but it's called Power of Less. And this guy also wrote another book called Zen to Done. And it's really just a productivity book. Has nothing to do with art per se, but it's something that I use every day. Literally, it changed the way I approached everything in life, but in music, it changed the way I approach making music, changed the way I approach releasing music, the business side, the marketing side. And I'll just break it down very simply, but the book goes in more detail, is that every day you wake up, you should be doing something, no matter how small it is, that's pushing you towards this big goal of yours. Generally, it's 3 tasks per day called most important tasks. So every day I wake up, I write down the 3 things that I'm going to get today that work toward this other thing. Obviously, my to-do list is long. I have a bunch of other shit to do, but those 3 things are pushing towards. So for instance, right now I'm gearing up to release this album on CD. Shout out. New Beginnings, cassette and vinyl, which I'm waiting on the vinyl right now. So every day I do 3 things that's towards that release, because I feel like we often get lost in the sauce and do other shit. Shiny object syndrome, where, I should be doing this, but I'm going to make a beat instead. Yeah, I'm kind of getting lost in the sauce of this conversation, but to bring it full circle.
You're good, man. You're good.
There's a book called War of Art, which talks about resistance, which is kind of what I just explained, is like you have all this other stuff that you need to be doing, but making a beat is far more fun. So let's put off the important thing to do the fun thing.
Yeah, man. That's a classic, War of Art. That one was pretty powerful for me as well.
It's a must read, and Art and Fear is kind of aligned with that in a lot of ways. A different approach. For me, Art and Fear kind of speaks to me a little bit more, like literally before and after I release anything, I read it again. I don't read it cover to cover, but I'll pick certain parts to reread, just to kind of remind me that, like, I'm not alone. Like, these fears are normal.
Right. And that's kind of the dope part to me, is like kind of the format of some of these books, right? Because even if you've never even read it one time all the way through, they're set up in a way where you can really just kind of open it to somewhere. And if it doesn't land, you'll be surprised how often it does, probably. But if it doesn't, you can just flip to another page, and there's kind of a different idea there. And so, yeah, I'm with you. And again, I'll put all these in the show notes and description for everybody so that they can check these out if it interests them.
Indeed.
You mentioned perfectionism. And so I feel like that's sort of a form of, it's like a block, beat block, writer's block, whatever you want to call it. I think regardless of whether you make beats or you literally write books, I think you experience it to some extent. And so can you tell us a little bit about your experience with writer's block and how you view it?
I think I have a kind of controversial view on writer's block. A lot of writers are probably going to get mad at me for saying this, and I don't really believe in it. On one side, I feel like it's kind of a convenient cop-out. What I think people confuse is that writer's block isn't about not being able to write. It's about not being able to write something that you're proud of, that you feel is worthy of your time, your effort, etc. But that's kind of everyone. That's what making art is. Like, you try something, it doesn't work, and you try something else, and you gotta keep trying, or else you don't get to the magic at the end of the rainbow. So you and I, and a lot of your listeners, make beats. I have an Ableton push in front of me. I know how it works. I can load up some drums. I can load up a Rhodes sound. I can load up a bass sound, and I can make a beat every day. There's nothing stopping me from doing that but myself. It's not because I don't have any ideas or whatever, but how do you get ideas? By tinkering. So my suggestion to anyone having a beat block is to force yourself. which sounds the exact opposite of what artists are supposed to do. They're supposed to wait for this inspiring moment and have magical clouds parting and beams of sunlight hitting them, and God takes over and they pour this out. And that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
But usually 100 things you did before that are you trying shit and failing. So my mantra is like, I have to try 100 things to get to the good thing. I'll try the 100 things, as opposed to like just hoping that this is going to be the good thing I make today. The flip side of that is while I'm going through that process, I don't throw shit out. So I have a bunch of unfinished, or and I shouldn't say unfinished because I try and complete everything. If I'm going to start a beat, I do it to completion, whether I like it or not, and I put it aside. And I'll listen to it 3 months later. I'm like, you know what? This sucks, but there's something there. And I'll develop that into something else. Or I don't. But I'm comfortable in the fact that, and maybe this comes from me being an ex-skateboarder, right? So skateboarders, we see the finished product in a skate video. We see the guy landing this crazy ass trick. It took him thousands of times failing that trick to nail it that one time that you see. So that's kind of how I look at beats, in that I just fail every day until I don't. That's how you beat beat block, is by making beats.
Right. It sounds sort of just like the importance of showing up to an extent, right? Like you can't ever make it if you're not in front of it in your studio or whatever, wherever you make music. If you're not there, how does it get made?
Exactly. I know it ruffles feathers because I know I used to be that person who would like, oh, I'm just not inspired. I'm having beat block. Every time I sit down, I make something that sucks. So I feel for people going through it. So I'm not like, talking down to them, but like really just make shit, man. Like it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be enjoyable. And I know forcing it doesn't sound enjoyable, but if this is what you want to do, like think back to when you first picked up any beat making piece of equipment. You didn't know what the fuck you were doing. You just fucked around. Now listen to that shit that you made 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you listen to it with disgust, but that was a necessary process to go through to get where you're at. That's my advice. Fuck up often, fail as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, man, talk a little bit more, because you mentioned how you don't throw anything away, even it's a bad idea, because I can imagine, okay, I sit down today and I make something and I'm like, man, this is trash. Like I'm just, what's the point in saving this?
Yeah, I learned something from doing quote unquote beat challenges. I was doing them. I was going through the thing that we were just talking about, where I was like, I'm just not making anything at all. I have beat block. And then one day on Instagram, this is when I had like 50 followers, just starting out on Instagram. I was like, there's no pressure here. I made a beat, forced myself to upload it with a video of my dog. And this is when Instagram just started video. So it was only 15-second clip. And I put a hashtag beats every day for 100 days. And then I pressed send, and I kind of felt stupid about pressing send. And I was like, shit. Now I put my pressure on myself. Mind you, it's 50 people, it's just friends and family. It's like not even a big fucking deal, but I felt obligated to complete that. So for the next 99 days, I made a beat, and whatever beat I made that day, I uploaded it whether I liked it or not. And the thing that I quickly realized is that, number one, if I put out trash on the internet, it's not really a big deal. It goes away, Two, stuff that I consider trash, some people loved. And that kind of got me in the mentality of kind of getting out of my way and realizing that, number one, it's not that serious. You're not going to your career's not over if you put out a bad beat on Instagram for 50 people or 5,000 people or 100,000 people. Like no one's going to give a shit a week later. And number two, I saved everything, including that Lloyd Banks beat, which I had made maybe 5 years before I sent it to him.
Wow.
Doing this beat challenge, where the beauty of the beat challenge for me is that you don't have time to second guess yourself, because half of these beats I was like, got home from whatever I did that day at 9:00 and I'm like, okay, shit, I got 3 hours to make a beat, shoot a video, mix it, master it, upload it. So like, it's literally like factory, like, okay, this is the beat for the day, fuck it, put it out there. And then before you can even go back and like criticize it, you're doing the next one. So back to the saving everything, it's kind of it's therapeutic in a way. Kind of see this body of work that spans a very specific set of time with some not realistic, but with some real limitations on it, time limitation, and to see what you did and relish in the fact that the good stuff was good, the bad stuff was bad, and you survived it, and it made you better, including the bad stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I stand on that. And I still don't ever throw anything away, because even if it's just one hi-hat sound or a kick pattern that I liked, you can pull from anything.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more, and I think I feel like you're almost kind of describing how it sort of becomes this journal by default, because it's sort of this documentation of where you've been. And if you don't save them, you don't have these little snapshots to go back to. And even if it is as small as a kick pattern, you don't know what the kick pattern will sound like tomorrow or a year from now or however long until you open it the next time, right? So I do think that's really interesting. You're never going to hear anything with the same ears twice, right?
Exactly.
So I'm curious, like, what made you send that text to all your friends to be like, hey, like, I'm committing to this beat challenge for the next 100 days?
I'm very big on accountability, because I'm also very adept at avoiding responsibility. So like, if I just leave it up to myself, I'm likely to be like, all right, I'll get to it tomorrow. I'll procrastinate, and it's just that kind of energy. But when other people are relying on me, even though it's kind of a trick, because no one's relying on me, no one's like waking up like, Cryptic didn't make a beat today, what the fuck, and like unfollow, like, it's not, no one gives a shit like that. But it's this perceived, like, I don't want to let anyone down, or I want to live up to my word. I'm very big on that. Like, if I say I'm going to do something, I really want to do it. And I feel bad about myself when I don't. So I don't mind letting myself down. I hate letting other people down. So just me telling 50 people that I'm doing this, and it's something that I've used in life. Like, that's how I quit smoking. Like, I literally, before I quit, I told everyone that I quit, everyone that I know. And I'm like, yo, if you see me with a cigarette, you have my permission to slap it out of my face. And I never smoked a cigarette again. Like, so like, it's effective. I don't know how healthy it is. I mean, it's healthy to not be smoking, but I don't know how healthy it is to put that kind of pressure on yourself from outside forces. But I don't think it's genuine pressure. I think it's just kind of this perceived someone watching you kind of thing to keep you in line, which I think society has done for eternity. So I do it to myself to hopefully benefit from life.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I think what it speaks to, at least what I notice, is it's having a self-awareness about how you're motivated and what can be effective for you. So maybe it's not as important what you did in terms of, like, for you, it's, I'm going to tell my friends and the people that I know and see and care about me and that I care about. And that's like, that kind of link is going to keep me accountable to the things that matter to me. How did you develop that awareness in the first place? That to know that, okay, this is the mechanism for me in order to achieve these goals.
In some ways, it's kind of, I guess it ties into the other thing, because I tried and failed a lot, and I still do. I think it's important to note that I'm saying all these things, and maybe from the outside, it looks like I have it all figured out. I do not. I still make promises that I don't keep, promises to myself, promises to people looking for music, promises of collaborations, which I'm supposed to be doing collaboration with you that has not panned out yet.
Oh, we'll get there, man. We'll get there.
We will get there.
It's all good.
It's kind of like, I think what did it for me was a little bit of history. In 2004, I released my first solo rap album, the Anti-Mobius Strip Theory. That album was finished in 99.
Wow.
2000. For a lot of reasons, it didn't come out until 2004. It was supposed to come out in 2001. I had promised it to people. I had spent money promoting it, and it didn't come out for 4 years. So that was kind of devastating to me at the time for a lot of reasons, because a lot of other things that I won't get into crazy detail about, but it was kind of the perfect storm for that record in terms of where the industry was, in terms of what people connected to the record were doing, people that were connected to me. Like, this was like brief history. Cannibal Ox record came out that year, which was huge. And I was on that record. My album was supposed to come out that year, a few months after that album dropped. Aesop Rock's debut on Def Jux came out that year, which I mixed. Aesop Rock is also on my solo album. So this was all 2001 where all this was supposed to be happening. My record didn't come out for 4 years. So that really affected me. Just from an emotional standpoint of like, here's this thing I promised everyone and it didn't happen. So I think that just kind of lit a fire under my ass. Is like, if I'm going to say it out loud, I have to make sure that it's going to happen. Whether that's me doing a lot of prep work to make sure that it's going to happen before I even mention it to the world, or whether I'm using that the opposite way and I'm saying it to the world to make sure that I get it fucking done. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's kind of where I think I learned it from. Like, this is just kind of analyzing it after the fact.
No, I mean, I think you have answered it, right? I mean, I think to me, what I'm hearing is you experienced the pain of not fulfilling what you felt like was a promise that you were responsible for. Right. And that pain led to you being like, I'm not going to experience this again if I can help it.
Right. Right. Cool. And then I learned to use that to my advantage. And yeah, it doesn't always work. I feel you. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's not necessarily about having something be 100%, but it's an interesting thing to just kind of understand, to have strategies, right? It doesn't mean that they're foolproof. Right. I think, I've been doing this for a long time, so you can't help but develop strategies as a form of protecting yourself from, like you said, pain. Like, kind of like, this shit fucked up last time. What can I do different to make sure that I never feel that again?
Let's jump over to a little bit of like kind of the development of artistic identity, man. Because again, like, as you just mentioned, like with all the time that you spent, it's just amazing, like the depth of catalog. And I think the distinctness of sound, like whenever I hear your drums, like I know it's you, and that's just a really dope thing. And I think it'll be cool to hear what you have to say about this. And you said to me when we talked before that, I don't have it exactly, I'm going to be kind of paraphrasing, but it was, in music, it's important to be unique. You are unique by default, so be yourself.
Yes, that's a bar. I can't believe I said that.
I believe it, dude.
That's how I feel. Yeah, no, that's 100% where I am. It's not 100% where I always live. I try to live by that mantra. I think it's kind of impossible, especially in today's world, to not have outside influence some way, some shape, some form. But to tie it back to the Lloyd Banks thing, that clearly is like a case of me like choosing to be myself and working out. First of all, thank you for noticing the drum thing. Like, that's kind of where I have put the most work in, I'd say. And it's kind of the most important thing to me in my music is my drums. And it's become kind of a signature, I guess. You just kind of told me that it's not something that I can see from inside, but I just know that's what I work on. So to hear people like respond to that makes me feel fucking good.
Absolutely, man.
Shit, what were we talking about?
The importance of being yourself.
Oh, okay. So yeah, for so many reasons. Number one, it's the only thing that separates you from everything else is just to be yourself. It's not always easy. And for people who are just starting out, may not even know who that is. I think it's also important to stress that it's a fluid situation. Like I'm always trying hard just to be myself, but myself today is not who myself 20 years ago was. And you can hear that difference in the music. And to me, it's a very natural path. Now, with people just starting out, I highly recommend mimicry. Like find all the shit that you love and copy it to learn, to get your chops, to figure out what it is that really you gravitate to. That's how I started out. I started out trying to make beats like the people who I looked up to and who I, listened to their music nonstop, like the Prince Pauls of the world, etc., Marley Marl. And through me trying to make my version of that, I've found myself. And I can see the roots of all the things I do, even including the drums. Like I see very specific songs in my past that kind of push me to where I am with make drum fills in hip hop, which is kind of like not a normal thing, but it's been done before me. It's just one thing that I kind of like latched on to these 1 or 2 or 3 songs. And I was like, all right, I'm going to figure out how they did this and I'm going to do it differently and blah, blah, blah. I still feel like I'm meandering away from the point, which you're selling a product with being a producer, being an artist, being a rapper, and the product is you. So be you. You can't sell someone else's image. You can, and people do it all the time. I know it's kind of a vague concept, but I'll tie it into something that's kind of prevalent in the beat scene, which is the type beats. I have a real problem with that entire world. And I have friends that do it and they're really good at it. But when I hear the stuff that they do, I don't hear lo-fi type beat or Griselda type beat. I hear their type of beat that kind of fits in this space a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other people who just blatantly kind of rip shit off. Like I can't vibe with that at all. And it's not to say that they're bad artists. There are some people who make really dope beats that sound like someone else. I don't know if that's art to me.
Yeah, I hear you. So it sort of sounds like there's like this sense of maybe like inauthenticity that you kind of sense when you listen to these things. And
100%.
so, yeah. So like how do you, like how do you encourage other people to kind of like, because it's sort of like, I agree with what you're saying a lot. I think there's like, it's sort of like in the same way that you learn words and develop a vocabulary so that you can better express what it is that you're feeling. Right. And so the more that you can develop like a sense of competency in whatever your kind of tools are, the more freely you're going to be able to kind of like express yourself, and the less barrier hopefully that there is between you and what you make.
Right.
All of that said, I think, aside from like kind of just developing competency, is there anything that you recommend or that you've done yourself that you think has helped you kind of find yourself? And maybe once you have found even pieces or glimpses of that, to feel maybe more comfortable in that space too?
There's one specific thing that I do, but it's only when I'm working on a project. It's not just like an everyday practice. When I'm working on a project, I don't listen to anything. I don't listen to anything unless it's very intentional. Like I want the vibe of this, so I'll listen to this, and it'll, by no like specific attempt on my own, it just naturally goes into the stuff that I wind up making. It's not like, oh, I'm going to make this, but I'll just in my, when I'm walking my dog or when I'm out in the park, I'll have something in my head and that naturally seeps into my music. But for the most part, especially with rap, when I'm working on a rap project, I don't listen to anything. People will send me links. Look, have you heard this? Nope. I'll hear it when I'm done with this project. But no, I don't listen to shit unless I'm listening to stuff for samples But that's one thing that I do. And it can be a little crazy because sometimes I'm working on a project for quite some time, and like,
Yeah.
but I find that like for me, and I realize this isn't for everyone, and it's not just about an influence thing. Sometimes it's, well, I guess it is about influence in that sense. Like sometimes I'll listen to something and I'll be like, oh shit, that's dope. I wish I was doing stuff more like that. Like, even if it's not a conscious thought, it's something that kind of seeps in, like, especially if I really like something. And I don't want that pull. I want it to come from me. And like, then when I play it for people, they can't like, oh, that sounds like this or sounds like that. They may get that feel from it, but I know where it came from. It came from me and only me.
That's interesting, man. I mean, it kind of sounds like, you put yourself in a little bit of like a vacuum where there's just a cutoff of like kind of intake and inspiration, and that maybe there's this like desire to like kind of put stuff like the next thing I'm going to do is going to be a capsule of like this time and experience that I have in me, and that you just kind of create a deadline for intake. And that's
right.
it's interesting.
That's pretty much it. And that's something that I just kind of learned kind of naturally, like not so much with the beats, but with my rap stuff, is that I always rap about what's important to me. What's important to me over my life has changed. Like my first record, Center of the Web, what was important to me, hanging out with my friends, watching sci-fi movies and talking about comic books and shit like that. So you listen to that, that's what that shit is. And then I got into a really dark kind of place and dealing with some sort of depression and like loss and stuff like that. And that's what my solo album was kind of about. And then 9/11 happened. And then my next album was about politics and shit like that. So it's like, I don't know any other way to be, especially with rap, is to rap where I am at this given moment, which is probably frustrating for fans of my work to some degree, because I mean, I get the emails all the time. Like, when are you going to rap like you did 20 something years ago? Honestly, never. Like, I'm not that person. Like, I can't, I don't even know what that guy thinks about. Like, we're not, I don't give a shit about a science fiction movie right now. So like, how am I going to rap about that shit? So I think that kind of just happened naturally, and it kind of just became the way I did things. Even with beats, I just try and make whatever I'm feeling at the moment. And I don't think the beats that I'm making today sound like the beats I made 2 years ago. They all have time. It's all me, but, the drums will be there or what have you. But over that time, I like to think that I've learned some things and had different influences here and there, and just let it happen and pick up the pieces after.
Yeah. Man. How do you think social media impacts sort of self-discovery and development of artistic identity?
It is wonderful and terrible, all wrapped up into one nice little Instagram bow. It definitely causes a lot of comparison, self-comparison, comparing myself to everything that I'm seeing, because the numbers are right there. I'm a math person. Like, when I see numbers, like this person posted this, why did this get 10,000 likes? Why? Like, what is that? Why didn't my thing get 10,000 likes? Why does he have X amount of followers and I have X amount of followers? You can't help. I don't care who you are. You can't help but make that comparison. And there are a lot of ways you can go with that comparison. You can go like, oh, well, he worked hard. He developed a brand. He done some stuff with advertising. His music is better than mine. His video is better than mine. You can go there. You can beat yourself up about the comparisons. Or you can say, maybe he's just been doing it longer and maybe he got lucky. Posted the right thing in the right place. Or, maybe I need to work on my stuff. Or maybe it's going to take time. Or maybe I'll never get there. Maybe there's so many ways to like I don't think we had that in when I started out, that ability to compare every little minute thing and worry that you're not doing the right thing. I think we were just kind of like, we compared the art and that was kind of it. I mean, in some levels, like, oh, he's got a record deal. Why is he getting booked for shows and I'm not? Like, so there's always some of that, but I think social media just kind of accelerates it and makes it so easy to beat yourself up. Like, even like, you know, just to show you how real this is and how imposter syndrome still is very much part of me. I posted something about, I got the test pressing for a record. I just posted a quick reel and the posted kind of shitty, like in comparison to other stuff that I posted. And instead of just being like, all right, whatever, you know, I'll post another thing and that'll do good, I started analyzing it because that's how my mind works. I'm like, why didn't this post do as well as previous posts? Well, I'm not in it. Should I have talked? Should I have said something? Should I have done something different with the camera? Should I pick a different song? Like, all these thoughts fucking go in my mind. And it's only because I posted on Instagram, which means nothing. A week from now, hey, shit, not even a week. I posted it maybe 2 days ago. No, everyone's moved on with their lives, except for me. I'm analyzing this thing. And I'm still thinking about it, clearly. Like, and people who fucking front like they don't give a shit, like, everyone cares. Or if you didn't really give a shit, you'd be off of Instagram and not posting anything at all. So I don't know. I guess that's where I stand about social media. I hate it, but I'm a part of it and I love it. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that it's just a little bit more challenging. Like when you can, the awareness that we all have of like people all over the world, whatever we're into, we can find people all over the world doing something similar. And then I think that awareness is something that, I don't know, maybe we're not built to handle necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But I'm curious about, you know, like how do you organize? Because it's like you maintain like a quality and active social presence while also being productive musically when you want to be. And you've done so, you know, for years and years. So I'm wondering, you know, how you've learned to, maybe there's some things you can share in terms of how you've learned to like organize, or there's a mindset, or there's like a tactical thing to get to a place where you're like, all right, this is something that I got to do because I want people to know about what I'm doing. But I also don't want to be somebody who is making things only for social media necessarily.
It's a little bit of both. I do make some things specifically for social media, and
Cool.
I don't. It's interesting you say that because I don't feel like I do have a grasp on it or a solid strategy. I go through phases where I'm like, I have a strategy, and it's usually based off the same thing we talked about before, the accountability kind of thing. Like, and I turn that into something that's branded and kind of like, for instance, the last thing I did, or one of the last things I did was, I call it Saturday Sketches. I hadn't been making beats. I'm like, all right, every day I'm going to call it a sketch. So that kind of is already kind of being on the defense. Like, hey guys, like the shit is not a finished beat. I'm just like throwing the sketch out there, you know? So, and I actually got the idea from an artist friend of mine. She's kind of she's a successful muralist, but she did this thing where she was doing 100 sketches and selling them for, I think it was like $10 a pop or something. She'd sketch something out and send it out to the world. People would buy them. So I'm like, all right, well, I could do this. I'm not going to sell them, but you know. So every Saturday I woke up, turned on a beat machines and made a beat, uploaded it, did a cool video. And I was like, oh, okay. If I do this every Saturday, I can brand it a certain way. And then people start looking for it. And it became like a regular thing. And then through that, the Friday singles thing happened where I was like, all right, let me flesh songs out. Beats that I had already done for the most part. Some I made on the spot, but I would take an older song or an older beat that I never released that I liked parts of it. Like we talked about not throwing things out. And I'm like, I don't like the drums on this. I love everything else. Let me redo the drums and add other elements, add changes, etc., and release it every Friday. And I branded that, and another happy accident of that, I end up with 39 instrumentals, and now it's an album, you know? So like, it may seem from the outside like I had some master plan, but it really was just a kind of me not wanting to smoke anymore and telling all my friends. So like, hey, I want to make a single every Friday. Hey, everyone, I'm making a single every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards I figured like, okay, I have all this music. What can I do with it?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, man, I love it. I mean, I think it really, there's like that continuity in all this, right? Like one, it's like, it's easy to look back and connect all the dots in a sense, because you can see it all now. And now you can make this album. But I think it's kind of connected to what you were saying earlier, that I think maybe you picked up in one of these books that you mentioned, which is, you know, these beats that you were making every Saturday sort of represent like, all right, here's one of those things I'm going to do each day to move towards something that's a higher level goal for me, right? And that allowed you to have the materials to release an album. And I think strategically and maybe like emotionally and mentally, it's a really cool strategy, because saying like, I'm going to make an album of 39 tracks is a big thing to say. But to say that today I'm going to make a beat, and then wake up the next day and say, today I'm going to make a beat. And then 39 days later, you wake up with 39 beats, you know? And so you're in a different place then. So I think it's really cool, man. I feel like you can really see like, in a lot of ways, man, I mean, you're practicing what you preach, you know, and experiencing success as a result, man. So again, I mean, well-deserved, you know?
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's kind of interesting because, again, I like delving into this stuff, but I'm very careful to let people know that that's not it, right? So like, not everything it works out like that. There are other albums that I have that I will tinker with for years, and wanted to get out 4 years ago and still on my hard drive kind of being worked out. So it's kind of this weird space of like a project like that, like New Beginnings, where I did it every Friday or whatever. I learned to get out of my own way. And then there's another project where I'm like, Mr. Perfectionism is back full force, and like, no. There's a breath you took in the second verse of that song. You have to re-record the whole shit. Like, shit, you got a new plug-in. Your vocals sound different on this, sound so much better on this new shit you recorded. Let's scrap the whole album, re-record all the vocals. You know, like, there's very much that is a huge part of my life still in a lot of different ways. But I also try to make room for things where I can just legitimately get the fuck out of the way and like just move forward. So I guess it's kind of just me telling everyone that like, be realistic. Like, you're not just gonna be like this machine that like pumps out shit that you love and that happens to work out all the time. Although, maybe not. Like I was about to say, although I know people like that, but really, do I have like an insight to their inner workings? I don't know what else is on their hard drive or what else they promise themselves they do. But I would suggest, or I'd like to think, because I know a lot of people who are fairly successful, way more successful than I am. And I know they have the same kind of self-doubts and worry and perfectionism and imposter syndromes. Like, I know people who Grammy nominations who have imposter syndrome, and I look at them like they're crazy and then also relate to them. But I'm like, what the fuck? You still have to deal with this shit? And then people are looking at me like I have a plaque and I'm still dealing with this shit. And they're like, what do you mean you have a plaque? And I'm like, it not to tie it all back to imposter syndrome, maybe that should be the title of this episode, but it's kind of, don't think it ever goes away. And I think it's kind of a necessary evil that we all have to deal with in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, man, it makes me think of an idea that I heard that I think it wasn't really brought up necessarily around imposter syndrome specifically, but I think it's connected. And it's sort of this idea that, you know, you have at least two voices, everybody, I think, right?
Yep.
And if you kind of imagine yourself as a vehicle, you know, like you're a bus, and all of those voices are riding on the bus, you know, but you kind of get to decide who's driving, you know, and at certain times, it's nice to have a different person or a different voice kind of in that driver's seat. And so I don't know if the goal or if it's even possible really to eradicate that voice from your mind. I think it's there with you forever. So I think it's sort of learning to find its appropriate seat, on the bus at the time that you're passing through whatever neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Artists are weird. We're just strange. Like, I don't know any artist who isn't self-conscious, concerned, worried, perfectionist, imposter syndrome. All those things are in every artist I know.
Mm-hmm.
But every artist I know also has a huge ego, is very driven, sure of themselves, confident. They make something they like and they're like, this is the fucking shit. And then when the same piece of music that I'm like nodding my head to, I'm like, this is the one that's going to change my life in the studio by myself. The second I play it for someone else, it's when a little bit of doubt creeps in. Like, why didn't they react the same way I reacted? Or, and then when you release it on a grander scale and like, no one even talking about that song, that's the one. No one realizes that's the one. So it's this weird, and maybe it's not just artists, maybe just everyone has that, where the multiple voices in your head, somehow in the same head, you have someone telling you like, you're garbage, that's trash. Other side, you're the best, you're invincible. All about the same person, the same art. It's a very weird, or maybe it's very normal, but it's interesting to say the least that, like I said, see, I've been around a lot of artists, specifically rappers, and rappers are known to have a bit of an ego, but it's always the best ones who are kind of not sure of themselves at some moments. Because I know people who are rappers who are always sure of themselves, and they never really turn out to be the ones, that do well, or well, that's kind of subjective, but that make music that I fuck with on a large scale. It's usually the people who have self-doubt, who are willing to to hear out other opinions, who are willing to try different things and not just be like, I did this, it's mine, I'm great. You can do that, but there also has to be the flip side, like yin and yang, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sort of sounds like, that where there's real value in having, those doubt or those voices that are maybe somewhat like contrarian in your head, or from other people in your life that you can trust, because that helps you see other angles of things.
Right. Like everything else in life, it's all about balance. You have to have both, I think, because if you start beating yourself up more than you're bigging yourself up, that's a very dangerous place to go. And I've been there. Musically start to completely doubt everything you're doing, and like, oh, what am I doing? Why am I wasting my time? I'm not good enough. Well, I'm not this, I'm not that. Look at them, log into social media, like, why do they have 1 million followers? I don't really even like their music. Like, you can quickly spiral. And I think back to social media, I think social media can help you spiral a little bit quicker, can push you off the ledge more than anything in human history has been capable of doing. But yeah, man, I don't know. Stay sane and stay balanced. I guess that's the advice. It's way easier said than done.
Yeah. And maybe this is connected to that, and I want to kind of we talked about this before, right? But it's like, there's this paradox that we experience, right? Because it's like, we know that we have imposter syndrome and all these other challenges and conflicts that come along with making music and releasing music. And then we read books and we learn ways to manage those. We learn strategies to help us. But it's like, sometimes I know all of this and I still feel like I'm blocked and I can't get to a place where whatever it is, whether it's releasing music or even making music consistently. And so how do you deal with like sort of this balance? It's like, I have all this information to solve these problems, but I'm not solving this problem.
Right. I mean, I think the end part of that is we're trying to solve a problem that's not solvable.
Mm.
Like you can solve something temporarily, but it's I guess it's just human nature. Like, because maybe if we were staying in the same place and no other outside forces existed, we could control everything, but we can't control everything. I can't control the next thing I'm going to make or the next thing I'm going to see on Instagram. It's going to change my thought process of what I made yesterday. And so the new problems are always popping up, or old problems with new faces. So I think for me, the reason why I can read the same book a million times, it helps with the same problem that I had 10 years ago is the same problem I have now, is because I just need the reminder. Like, I get so lost in everything else that I don't even recognize it until like I think about it, or until I read a book and I relate to someone else going through something, like, oh shit, that's what I'm going through. How did I not see that? So yeah, I don't know if it's a problem that can be solved. I think it's human existence, fortunate or unfortunately. Oddly, that's a inside joke that is a quote from Donald Trump, who said something recently. He said, fortunately or unfortunately, which is kind of like the stupidest thing you could ever say, I think. It's like, yeah, obviously it's one of the two. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm sure Trump is listening. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Peace out to you.
He'll enjoy that. Man, all right. So, I mean, I do want to hit you with these like kind of quick one-hit questions before we jump into those. Are there any upcoming projects or anything you want to kind of mention that's coming up we can be looking for?
Yeah. See now, well, this one's definitely coming because I just got the test pressings for one vinyl a couple days ago. So New Beginnings, which is 37 instrumentals total, CD, cassette, and a 2-part vinyl. Half the instrumentals on one vinyl, half on the other. That's coming, we'll say soon. Summer of 2023. I don't know. I don't have a date yet, but basically once I get the vinyl and then I kind of get all the other business shit in line, the marketing shit, then I'll press the button and it'll be out in the world. Other than that, I have a rap album that I kind of want to say is coming out, but who knows? It's called The World According To. It's the third of a trilogy. And yeah, it's supposed to come out this year. It was supposed to come out last year. It's also supposed to come out the year before that. So to tie that back into everything that we've been talking about, who the fuck knows? But it's coming.
That's what's up, man. Maybe this is kind of your accountability text message in mass, saying here on this interview.
Hopefully.
But yeah, make sure you send me some of that vinyl. I'm going to need at least one of those.
Got you.
All right, man. And then these next ones, man, are just kind of quick. So feel free to be as short or as long as you want to be with them. Which DAW do you use?
I'm an Ableton guy. I do, however, use Logic from time to time. Mainly because that's what I used and where all my old sessions are. So when I'm going to an old session and kind of like repurposing it for something new, I'll work in Logic and then eventually stem it out into Ableton and then do stuff in Ableton. I also do use Luna, but I don't know it that well yet, so I don't feel comfortable. It's kind of just in the learning phases. I haven't released anything that I've done in Luna yet.
Yeah, I started mixing in Luna in the last year, and like I've almost everything that I've put out in the last like whatever has been mixed in Luna. Okay. And it's been a while since I've used Logic, but I feel like it's pretty similar in the way that it obviously looks kind of different, but I really feel like a lot of the flow and the way plugins even sit on the channels and stuff is very similar.
Yeah, for sure. The thing is, like, I used Logic for so many years, and then like you use Ableton. Ableton is so different. It's kind of like I reprogram my brain, and then I like the reprogramming. So now I feel like I'm going back to like a Logic kind of thing. But I do think the thing that's important for me is like I want to create in Ableton and mix elsewhere. I feel like that'll help me make the processes to separate the processes. and stop the endless going back and forth, because I'll create and then I'll start mixing in Ableton and be like, oh, you know what? I could rearrange this a little better here. And then next thing I know, I'm arranging and adding instruments and I'm producing again. And then I have to jump back into mixing it. It winds up going back and forth way longer than it should. So I think my goal is to complete creating in Ableton, dump it to Luna, and then figuratively throw out the Ableton session. I save everything, but just forget it. It exists.
No, I hear you. I've been trying to adopt something like that. Yeah, because I mean, Ableton is kind of strange, but once you get used to it, I feel like it's a really efficient way to work. I think Absolutely. It's just so easy to access things that you need, especially automation, man. I really think that automation in Ableton is like the best.
Yeah, no, it's to me, I'll take the flame wars from all the other DAW. Ableton is the one. Like, it's just the one. Maybe it doesn't sound as good or doesn't have this or that, but like the way that it is built, I feel is more adaptable to whatever way you want your workflow to go. Because I know a million people that use Ableton and none of them use it the same way.
Yeah, big facts, man. Big facts. What's your go-to plugin?
I have a bunch, but we'll narrow it down to my top 100.
Let's go.
I've been really addicted. That joke going to Addictive Keys.
Okay.
It's my go-to road sound for whatever reason. And I feel like there are better ones that I have, but I don't know, just something about it. Like, I just throw it on and I'm like, yeah, that's the sound I was looking for. Two bass plugins that I could not survive with is Rickenbacker bass and Trillion. That's pretty much it. That's all I need for the rest of my life with bass sounds. Yeah, I mean, there's a million other like little effects plugins that what's it, the Oxford limiter, Valhalla reverb and Valhalla delay. Yeah, you should probably stop me before I just start rambling off everything.
Man, I just want to say that like I've been trying to use Trillion more lately. I just find it to be, I think maybe I just still haven't found my go-tos in there. It's just such a big library, you know?
Overwhelming as fuck.
Yeah. Like, so I think finding the sounds that are like going to work, like you could spend, you know, just sessions and sessions trying to like organize, like, okay, here's some patches that are good places to start.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do not do that. I have just kind of literally spend an hour, like if I'm making a beat, spend an hour going through bass sounds and I'm like, that's not the right one.
I don't feel as bad now. Thank you for that.
Yeah. No, that's kind of the downfall of that. Yeah, I need to sit down with. I used to use it a long time ago on Logic, and I had it was cracked. So like I had all my favorites and everything like perfect. And then when I moved to Ableton and started not using cracked stuff, I bought it and like shit, all my favorites are gone. So I'm still trying to.
Yeah, I feel the pain there. Just that, yeah, man, you just like, when you've been making music for a while, like having projects just work consistently when you open them up, however long, after some time passes, it's just, yeah, that can be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite piece of physical gear?
I mean, it's the push. I want to say something cool like my Akai S950 or my ASR 10, which I love dearly, but they don't nearly get used as much as the push. Like, give me the push and my computer and I'm happy. That's really legitimately all I need to make pretty much everything. My Akai S950 is kind of special to me because it's the first sampler I ever owned, my first real piece of equipment, I would say. And it's what I made my first 2 records on.
Wow.
And I got it in 91. Or no, 90 or 89, something like that. And
wow.
It's still fucking working and still sounds gritty. And yeah, it's unmatched. And for those out there that I'm not throwing shade, but there are a couple of plugins that mimic the sound of an S950. They're good and they sound good and they do cool things to sound, but they don't sound anything like an actual S950.
Gotcha.
I've A/B'd them and yeah, very different.
Nothing like the real thing, man.
There isn't.
3 producers you think everybody could benefit from listening to? And I don't know if you really need this qualifier, but I usually put this in there just in case you can't use Madlib or Dilla.
That's fair. I'm old, so I've been releasing music as long as those guys. So like, that's so tough, man. It's a billion. I'm not going to go too deep, but like, all right, let's start with something that's not hip hop. Huge influence on me. And if I say this out loud and people listen to his music and listen to my music, I hope that people see the influence there. It's David Axelrod, jazz legend, passed away not long ago. Yeah, just the way he layers his sounds, the cinematic textures, the strings, the drums, the bass lines. Like, I've stolen a lot from him. No lie. I'm sure you hear my dog going nuts back there.
Yeah, a little bit. He's all right though. It's a dog-friendly conversation and podcast here. We love dogs.
I love dogs as well, but she's not feeling that answer. I think she wants me to talk about hip hop producers. So hip hop, I'll go with someone who I know, but you want to talk about someone who's unapologetically himself, who no one sounds like him, and who has a long, successful career. LP, now of Run the Jewels, I guess. I always say LP of Company Flow because I'm old and that's what I know him from. But
right.
Yeah, I just think he does things that no one else does. And I find that his music is very polarizing. I feel like there are a lot of people that can't fuck with it, but the people who fuck with it really fuck with it. And I think that's kind of just kind of a direct result of someone being unapologetically themselves, which I respect that a lot. And another one would be Alchemist. I don't feel like he does. I feel like he's like the perfect example of someone who doesn't do too much, who knows how to pull back and not overproduce. You know, sometimes like in hip hop, especially when you're dealing with an MC, sometimes a 2-bar loop and some drums is all you need for it to be dope. And I think producers often, myself included, myself especially, feel like there has to be a level of difficulty to what we do to make it have value. And yeah, I just don't think that's the case. I think to some of my favorite beats of all time, and then I find the record they're sampled from, like, oh, they literally just looped it and put drums on it, and it's my favorite thing ever. And the value of it hasn't decreased. You know, it's producing, it's not diving, right? Diving, you get scored based on the difficulty of your dive. Yeah, just make dope music. And Alchemist, he consistently does that. He just finds samples that no one else finds and puts drums to them and head nod factor.
Yeah, man. Did you see that the Idea Generation interview with him?
I did not.
Yeah, pretty dope. Highly recommend anybody listening who hasn't already seen that. It's a series that's on YouTube. I think it's that. I forget the guy's name. The guy from I think he was from Complex. He's been doing.
I've seen clips of it. I think they're running ads for it on Instagram. I keep seeing it and make me need to check it out, but I haven't had a chance to yet.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed. There's been a lot of cool interviews on there, but if you're a fan of The Alchemist, definitely got to check his out.
All right, I will definitely check it out.
Do you have 3 albums that pop out to you?
Yeah, this is also another impossible thing. I can give you about 400 lists of 3, but I'll do my best. I'll pick some albums that, well, the first album at least is something that changed the way I produced, changed the way I made music, changed the way I looked at hip hop, and that was Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest. I was already making beats for about a year, and that came out, and I was like, I was pretty confident about my beats, as young people are pretty confident and cocky about their shit. And then that came out and I was like, nope, I'm doing everything wrong. My drums don't hit hard enough. My bass lines aren't unique enough. These guys are okay. I don't know what the fuck they're doing, but I'm going to try and figure out that. And that became like a real like moment for me. There are a few moments in hip hop that I can distinctly remember. There was a Cryptic one before that and a Cryptic one after, and they're very different. And that was like a tipping point for me. Low End Theory is a huge one for me. Another one that was before that, related to that, because also the Native Tongues album was 3 Feet High and Rising by De La Soul, produced by Prince Paul. Yeah, the second I popped that cassette in my 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais, I was at Tower Records. I'll try to keep this brief, but I was at Tower Records. I bought the tape. I put it in. I already knew their singles, loved their stuff. You know, anyone who knows the album, it's got it's the birth of skits. So like, never heard skits before. And there's like the game show intro. And I have a 15-minute ride home, and the album is something crazy, like 90 minutes long. And I started driving home and I saw my house and I was like, nope, I can't pause this tape for a second to like park my car, go inside the house and put the tape in. I'm just going to keep driving because I'm not going to stop playing this. And I drove for an hour and a half until I listened to it from beginning to end. And I was blown away. It changed how I looked at hip hop. I wasn't producing yet. I was DJing and kind of had it in my mind that I wanted to produce and was collecting samples. And for anyone that knows that album, like they were one of the first artists to sample outside of the quote unquote normal places that people were pulling samples from, which was mostly funk, a lot of James Brown, and there is some of that on there, like Parliament, Funkadelic, and some soul stuff, but they were just sampling everything and they didn't give a fuck. And that kind of gave me more permission to like be weird about it, and combine that with the fact that they were from Long Island where I grew up, and they were weird kids and I was a weird kid. Or, you know, weird is pretty normal, but in the hip hop context, we weren't trying to be hard, or we were just weird kids rapping about weird shit. And that just kind of gave me confidence that I was like on a right path and just being unique and being myself and not really trying to be anyone else. That was, I guess, tie it back to early part of our talk. I guess that was probably the first time that happened for me in hip hop, that album, to see someone who's like unapologetically themselves when everyone else was doing something different. And yeah, that album had a big impact on me. And last, I have a couple ways I could go with this, but I'll go with to get out of New York for a second, we'll go to the West Coast and talk about Souls of Mischief, 93 Till Infinity. That album's another one where it's kind of like the cats that I was rapping with, we were kind of on a path. I mean, we were more New York, but like as far as rapping goes, like their use of syllables and rhyming multiple syllables in different places of the bar was kind of something that we were doing, and seeing them do it on such a scale. And to the rap group I was in had 4 MCs. They have 4 MCs. All of us sounded different than each other. All of them sound different than each other, but sort of something ties them together. And I related to that in a lot of ways. And it was kind of also another moment in time where I was like, okay, we're on to something. Like, and it just happened naturally. And we didn't have any like thing to look at in the quote unquote industry that resembled that had 4 MCs in a group. It was just kind of like, okay, cool. We stumbled across this and they did it and it works. And yeah, it was just kind of refreshing.
That's what's up, man. Someone else you think I should talk to on this particular podcast?
Again, long list of names pops up, but I'm going to go with someone who we both know. Stolen Drums. Like, I feel like that's a dude that's I don't know, he's got this like this ability for everything that he touches to kind of blow up, turn to gold, so to speak. He's got that Midas touch.
Yeah, shot the soul in drums.
Yeah.
That's how we met, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's how I've met a lot of people through Sidechain Society. He, you know, obviously you should talk to him so you'll get more in depth with him about him. But the one thing that I really took from him that was kind of like, it blew my mind and kind of made me change, honestly, the way I looked at some things it was just how open he was about producing and how he made music. And I was always, you know, I'm old school. I was always from the old school of like literally when we were DJing back in the 80s and you had a record that you didn't want anyone to know, blacked out the labels so that when you're DJing a party and people come over trying to look at your records, they couldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And we never told the sources of samples. You know, there's a reason the term sample snitching exists. We never told the source of samples. I never shared tips or drum techniques because, you know, like if I give that secret sauce away, then like, why does anyone need me? And that was my mentality literally up until like I saw drums and like, I'm like, this dude is on a live stream, literally showing you how the sausage is made.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching and I'm like, holy shit, man. And being a part of Sidechain, you also kind of see it in that community is that everyone shares everything and it doesn't make us sound like each other or it doesn't change anyone's style. Like I can still hear the difference between all the producers in there. So that was very instrumental in making me want to share more about my process, which I still haven't done to the extent that I would like to, but that's definitely a direction that I'm going. So shout out to drums for that.
Yeah, big shout out. Yeah, man, look forward to seeing what you do with that because I think you definitely have a lot to teach us all.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Favorite movie?
That one's easy. That's Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino. There's some problematic things in that movie, obviously, but it's a masterpiece. It's I don't even know how to say that. It kind of reminds me. Maybe this sounds a little narcissistic. It reminds me of the way that me and my crew Adams Family rap. In that, like, if we're gonna tell a story, it's not gonna be straightforward. You know, like we're gonna start at the end and have you thinking like for the first 4 to 8 bars of the song, like what the fuck is he talking about? And then by the end, you're like, oh shit. Let me rewind and see how this all connects. And like, I don't know, there's no movies really did that. Like novels do it all the time, but he somehow made that work on screen in that movie in particular and in other movies that he's done. You know, I'm a film nerd, so I could talk about this shit all fucking day, but not to get too deep into it. But like, he has this knack for creating dialogue that has nothing really to do with the plot, but lets you know exactly who these characters are. Obviously,
well said. Yeah,
the scene with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, like just them talking about, you know, like Royale with cheese or foot massage and all that shit. Meanwhile, they're hitmen going on. Like other movies, you know, they give all the hits you're doing before they do the thing. This is just kind of like, who are these guys? Like, just kind of leaves you, but like, oh shit, you're just lost in their conversation. It's funny and it's interesting, and then like they're going to like collect money and wind up killing some people. So I don't know. I always dug that about the film. And
yeah, man, that's one of my favorites too, man. I love that one. Classic. Yeah, absolutely.
It feels cliche to say, but it's just it's a great piece of art.
Yeah, if it's good, it's good, man.
Facts.
If you were to do one thing that would break the internet, what would it be?
I don't really want to break the internet. but I don't know. There's something in mind that I've been off and on working on doing for years, and I haven't gotten there. I've gotten to a place where it's okay, but I can't get it to a place where I want to show or kind of don't even want to talk about it because I think like saying it out into the universe, maybe someone else would get to it and do it first. Someone might have already done it, but I'm going to say it because fuck it. You only live once. As you know, I finger drum from time to time. Haven't been doing it lately, but I think I do it in a way that's kind of different than most people. But I would love to be able to finger drum and rap at the same time, both on a high level. Like if I could somehow figure out to do crazy drum fills and little drum roll type of things that I'm known for doing, and rap on beat, and be able to pull that off on Instagram, like that might be something that could get some legs. Probably ain't gonna break the internet unless I do it like with a naked girl sitting on my push or something. But maybe we'll put a crack in the internet for a day.
Man, let's see that, man. Again, let's hope that this is kind of your text message to 100 friends. Would love to see you pull that off. It makes me, it brought up this image for me. Is like I saw, I don't know if you're a J Live fan or not, but I saw J Live years ago.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And man, and his like live scratching and DJing while he spits I was so blown away by that. Yeah. So I feel like, it's you like doing your unique version of that, please.
Exactly that. There's another cat. I don't know if you know Edan.
No, not yet.
He does similar things at a more complex level than, not to take anything away from J Live. I've seen J Live live and he's fucking dope.
Yeah.
He came a little later and I think he probably was inspired by J Live and he does it on a level that's like, holy shit. Like, so that's kind of, those are the two people I had in mind.
Oh, wow.
Cool that you brought up J Live, but I've never seen anyone do it with finger drumming. So I've gotten it to a point where I can do simple drum patterns and do it, but it's still kind of not, like you're a musician, so it's not at the point where I can do it without thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it's like very like mechanical. I say right now, I haven't done it or tried to do it in over a year because I get bogged down with other things and I just haven't made the time for it. But yeah, maybe this will be the thing that sparks interest in that again.
Yeah, man, I love it, man. I mean, I would love to see it, honestly. And I know you got it in you. It's just a matter of doing it. That's all.
Yeah. Of waking up and doing it every day until I'm good at it.
That's what's up, man. Anything else that you would like to share? Let us know where we can find you on the socials, on the internet and everything, because you do have a lot of dope shit out there for people to see.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll just make it easy. Instagram is where I'm most active. I have YouTube and I have all that stuff, that other stuff. You can Google Cryptic One and find all of it. But my Instagram is at crypt, CRYP_uno, spelled out UNO. You can find me at my website, cryptic1one.net. So it's really just a store and a place to sign up for my email list where you get all sorts of stuff. That's kind of where my production tips are going to be heading. Once I narrow that down and kind of figure that space out. But it's really just to get updates on all things related to me and my music. And the big things about my list is I try to not just make it about me promoting myself, which everyone does that. Like, hey, I have a new record coming out. I have this, that. I try and offer some sort of value, whether it's a life tip or a book or just some shit I'm going through that I think might help someone. So yeah, those are the places to find me. One other thing that I failed to mention earlier, I have not mentioned this anywhere. So this New Beginnings, and we've been talking about my drums. One of the things that I'm doing is, I can't do it with all the tracks because some of them from sample packs, but I think it's 35 of the tracks on there. I'm releasing just the drum tracks of that as a separate release. It's going to be digital only, and I think I haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to do it, but I think it's going to be like a package deal. If you buy the album, you get the drums for X amount.
Love that, man. That's awesome.
But yeah, people have been asking for drums for so long, and part of me wanted to just curate like a drum pack specifically. Like, I'm going to make these drums just for this pack. But then I'm like, these drums are already there. People already talk about these drums. I think it'd be really cool to see what people do with them. That's kind of, I don't know. It's always like been a thing for me to like search and see where people sample things from. And it's always given me like a feeling. So like, I can't imagine like someone sampling from me in some way, shape or form, like how that feeling must be. So we'll hopefully find out. But I'm definitely, to people who sign up to my list, are going to get some of those 30 something. They're not going to get all of them, but I'll drop a few for free.
No, that's what's up, man. So everybody listening, cryptic1.net, CRYPTIC1.net. Sign up because that album's going to drop. You're going to have the opportunity to get the drums, as we just found out here. It's got the vinyl coming out. Follow on Instagram as well, so that you can catch the cinematic quality of this man's finger drumming videos are worthwhile and stay up to date. So follow this man. Crypt, thank you so much for being here, man. Your dedication to music, is evidenced just by the length of time, and your love for it. And it's just so clear that you care about other people and wanting other people to make their own music and their own art. Just wishing you all the best, man, and continued success. Thank you so much for being here.
Man, appreciate everything, man. Thank you for all the kind words and for the interview, man. These are questions I don't get asked, so it's always fun to talk about new things.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Peace.
That's it for this episode of ProducerHead. Appreciate you coming through and being a part of it. My hope is that it helps you unlock a bit more creativity and find progress in a way that matters to you. Before we go, there are 3 simple and zero-cost ways to support the ProducerHead podcast. 1, tap in and subscribe or follow wherever you're listening, whether it be Spotify or Apple. 2, if you haven't already, drop a review on Apple or Spotify. Maybe both if you're feeling it. The feedback is appreciated and helps me continue to do what's working while improving along the way. 3, send this episode to one person who would enjoy it. Do not underestimate the power of word of mouth. The most old school of methods are often the most effective. Finally, let's stay connected. I regularly share ideas that help me develop my creative process, along with music recommendations, and even give away free music and sample packs. Head to torubeat.com, torubeat.com, and sign up to receive all of these things and stay up on all things ProducerHead. You can also stay connected with me and the podcast at torubeat, TORUBEAT, on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. The theme music is one of my own songs. It is called Room to Breathe and available now on all streaming platforms. Again, for real, thank you so much for being here with me, and I look forward to catching you in the next episode of ProducerHead. This has been Toru, and in a way, so are you. Peace.